In our eyes. A couple of items for you while we are wrapping up the week. As you know, the administration submitted to Congress President Biden's discretionary funding request for fiscal year 2022. I know we did a call this morning, but just to give you all a little bit more from here. As Congress prepares to begin the annual appropriations process, the request lays out the president's discretionary funding recommendations across a wide range of policy areas and outlines a strategy for reinvesting in the foundations of our country's resilience and strength. The request, which represents only one element of the administration's broader agenda, includes major proposed investments, in K through 12 education, cutting-edge medical research, housing, civil rights, and a range of other priorities that are vital to our future. Later this spring, we will release the president's full budget, which will present a unified, comprehensive plan to address the overlapping crises we face in a fiscally and economically responsible way, and that will also include a number of the proposals you've seen him introduce over the last, the big proposal he just introduced and other proposals that he will introduce between now and then. Our country is confronting historic crises, a pandemic, an economic downturn, climate change, and a reckoning on racial injustice. At the same time, we're also inheriting a legacy of chronic underinvestment, in our view, in priorities that are vital to our long-term success and our ability to confront the challenges before us. So the president is focused on reversing this trend and reinvesting in the foundations of our strength, and this process provides another opportunity to do that. And so the funding proposal is an indication of our priorities. You may have also noticed another flag flying above the White House today, in keeping with the President and the First Lady's commitment to honor the sacrifices of all those who serve, including veterans, their families, caregivers, and survivors. The President and First Lady have restored the POW MIA flag to its original location on top of the White House residence. In a true display of bipartisanship, Senators Hassan, Warren, and Cotton wrote to the president at the beginning of the administration, requesting the POW MIA flag fly high above the residence. This follows passage of a bipartisan legislation in 2019, led by those same senators, which requires the flag to be displayed whenever the American flag flies on federal buildings. Today also happens to be National Former Prisoner of War Recognition Day, a day when we remember and honor those who were in captivity in service to our nation and recognize those who awaited their return. I have two more items. One of them is a week ahead. The Semiconductor Summit, of great interest to many of you, I know. On Monday afternoon, following President Biden's release of on Monday afternoon, National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan and NAC Director Brian Deese will host a virtual CEO summit on semiconductor and supply chain resilience to discuss both the American Jobs Plan as well as steps to strengthen the resilience of American supply chains for semiconductors and other key areas, something we discuss in here quite frequently. They will also be joined by Secretary of Commerce Gina Raimondo, who has been one of the leading voices in the administration. We provided a list to the pool of the attendees or the companies that will be represented at that, which you should all have, and if not, let us know and we will give it to you directly after the briefing. Finally, for the week ahead, the president will, of course, continue making the case in public and in meetings with members of Congress for the critical need to pass the American Jobs Plan, make historic investments in infrastructure. On Monday, he will meet with Democratic and Republican members of both the House and Senate to discuss the American Jobs Plan and the need for a bold, once-in-a-generation investment in America to put millions of people to work. I expect we will provide that list on Monday. Once attendees are confirmed, it will be bipartisan and bicameral, that meeting. As Speaker Pelosi's office announced earlier today, on Tuesday, the president will pay his respects in a congressional tribute for U.S. Capitol Police Officer William Evans as he lies in honor in the Capitol Rotunda. Later that day, he will meet with members of the Congressional Black Caucus at the White House. On Thursday, the president will meet with members of the Congressional Asian Pacific American Caucus. And on Friday, the president will welcome the Prime Minister of Japan. As you all already know, this will be the president's first in-person visit with a foreign leader, reflecting the importance of our bilateral relationship, and I expect they will take some questions after that meeting. With that, Josh.
Thanks, Jen. Three things real quick. First, the discretionary spending proposal tries to make investments in the country that the administration says couldn't be made because of the 2011 Budget Control Act and the caps on spending. That deal had to be reached with Republicans. I'm curious, what gives you more confidence that an increase in discretionary spending can be reached with today's Republicans than the Republicans of a decade ago?
Well, I would first say that any budgetary proposal, including a discretionary proposal that is not a full budget, is an opportunity to outline the priorities of the existing administration. And it is a reflection of the president's view that a number of these discretionary programs were underfunded over the last several years, and therefore prompted a plus-up and a proposed plus-up, because if we are going to address a range of issues where there is agreement among Republicans as well that we need to work together to, support additional funding to address these various crises in our country. So I will say we're at the beginning of our process. This is the beginning of what we know is a long journey. It's meant to give discretionary guidance so that officials and staffers on the Hill, the people who followed in the footsteps of Shalonda Young can get to work. That's exactly what it will do, and we're looking forward to having those conversations.
Two, does the president have any thoughts on the votes of Amazon workers in Alabama against unionization? Something he kind of encouraged them to take that vote.
Well, the president has said that whether to organize a union is a worker's choice. And the National Labor Relations Board has a process for ensuring there is an accurate count of the votes cast in selection so that we can know what choice the workers have made. So the president is going to wait, just for your own planning, for the NLRB to finish its process and declare a result to make a further comment. But I will say broadly, as you know and you alluded to in your question, we know it's very difficult for workers to make the choice to form a union. That's why the president's American Jobs Plan includes protecting the Right to Organize Act, which would give more workers the ability to organize and bargain collectively with their employees. And that's a fundamental priority for him, something he's fought for throughout his career. But we will wait for further comment until the NLRB concludes their analysis.
And then North Korea's leader said the country's economic woes right now are the worst since the famine in the 1990s. Does that create any additional security risks for the U.S.? And are we under any obligation to deal with a humanitarian crisis?
Well, first, I would say that no actions that we are taking as it relates to sanctions are meant to be targeted at the North Korean people. They are in the conditions and the circumstances they're in because of the actions of their leadership. We continue to work with international leaders and organizations to provide humanitarian assistance, something that we believe is important and vital to do from a humane standpoint, even while we have issues with their nuclear aspirations. Go ahead.
We looked at the Pentagon budget. You're proposing a modest increase. Mm-hmm. Is that enough to meet the priorities set out by the administration, since you're facing an increasingly assertive China and Russia poses a threat to Ukraine?
You're absolutely right, Stephen. We've spoken, of course, about our concerns about exactly those issues. I will say that first that this is a proposal to give guidance to the Hill and hardworking budget staffers on the Hill as they put together the 2022, budgetary plans. The focus of the plus-up on defense is meant to address a couple of issues over that period of time, promoting diversity and inclusion in the armed forces, fulfilling our commitments to military families. Part of it goes to military and civilian pay increases, or that's what is proposed, prioritizing defense investments in climate resilience and energy efficiency. We believe it provides a robust funding level for the military forces needed to deter war and ensure our nation's security is grounded in the administration's interim national security guidance. But again, there will be a full budget later this spring that will be proposed by this White House.
Secondly, China's been conducting military exercises around Taiwan. How do you interpret these moves? Are you concerned that they might invade Taiwan?
First, let me say that we're not looking, as you know, for confrontation with China. Our focus and our relationship is one based on steep competition. We have been clearly, publicly and privately expressed our growing concerns about China's aggression towards Taiwan. China has taken increasingly coercive action to undercut democracy in Taiwan. We've seen a concerning increase in PRC military activity in the Taiwan Strait, which we believe is potentially destabilizing. So we are watching that closely. I can't make any other predictions from here. Of course, the Department of Defense and others would be in the lead on making those assessments. Go ahead.
Jen, thank you. The President's commission on expanding the Supreme Court is out. We know he's going to wait for the results. Mm-hmm. What is the president's view on of the calls for Justice Breyer to step down?
He believes that's a decision Justice Breyer will make when he decides it's time to no longer serve on the Supreme Court.
So should the groups pushing for him to go back off?
I think I can just speak to what the president's view is of the Supreme Court justice's ability to make his own decision.
And outside the inauguration, when he was sworn in, has he had any conversations with Supreme Court justices?
Not that I'm aware of. I'm happy to check if there's anything we can read out.
Next week, Congress gets back. You announced this bicameral bipartisan meeting. You're entering an interesting phase where in the House and the Senate, there is now a single vote margin between the two parties. And in essence, 1, 2, or 3 members of your own party could upend the president's legislative agenda. How are you guys recalibrating to deal with this closer majority or closer margin in both chambers as you try to get these incredibly expensive and ambitious plans passed?
Well, first I would say that what an interesting time to be in Washington and be all of you. Our focus has long been working with Democrats and Republicans. That is the president's objective. And obviously the close margins make that a necessity. And so when he is inviting members here, he's inviting not just one wing of a party, not just one wing even of his own party. He wants to have the discussion about how we can work together to address our nation's outdated infrastructure and rebuilding our workforce for the future. Now, from our vantage point and from our viewpoint, we've seen there have been a number of Republicans in the Senate, I'll give you more homework, but you probably know this off the top of your head, Ed, who have supported infrastructure bills, who have supported, the WRDA bills, who have supported legislation that is consistent with what the president is proposing. And as Secretary Buttigieg just conveyed, in a lot of the discussions we're having, most of the disagreement is about the size. Some think it's too small, some think it's too big. It's like Goldilocks. We'll have those discussions, but also about the pay-fors. And so those are the conversations that we will have. But largely the margins in Washington don't change our approach, because the president was elected because he was committed to working with both parties, to working together to address the crises our country is facing. Go ahead, Peter.
Thank you very much. To follow up on Ed's questions about the Supreme Court action today, President Biden once said in 1983 he thought court packing was
time back machine.
Oh yeah. He said he thought that court packing was a bonehead idea when FDR tried it. So why ask a panel now to go and see if it is a good idea?
Well, first, the panel is being asked to take a number of steps, including the pros and cons on exactly that issue. But they will also be looking at the court's role in the constitutional system, the length of service and turnover of justices on the court, the membership and size of the court, and the court's case selection rules and practices. And the makeup of this commission, which was vital for the president, there are progressives on the court, there are conservatives on the court. People will present different opinions and different points of view, and then they'll have a report at the end of 180 days.
Okay, and then about immigration, the U.S. government is now reportedly spending $60 million a week to shelter migrant children. That adds up to $3.1 billion in a year. Where is that money coming from?
Well, first I would say that, as you may recall, the prior administration requested and received nearly $3 billion in supplemental funding from Congress for the UC program back in 2019. That came after the previous administration had already made multiple transfers of hundreds of millions of dollars. And our commitment is to ensuring HHS has the funds it needs now to safely and humanely care for children, which of course is resource intensive. We know that. There are 200 permanent shelters around the country, and there are needs related to the pandemic, social distancing, enhanced ventilation and testing that are additional needs given the time that we're living in.
And because of the time that we're living in, is there concern if this is HHS money that it is, that these shelters, the Washington Post says the costs are going to rise significantly, that the shelters might be draining pandemic response elsewhere.
No, that is not what our concern is. At all. We have funding for the pandemic response. I'm just conveying to you what we feel this cost is and why it is at the rate it is at this point in time.
And then just one more. Texas Governor Greg Abbott says that he asked the Biden administration to shut down the temporary shelter for migrant kids at the Freeman Coliseum in San Antonio because he says he has gotten information that children there are being sexually assaulted. Is that facility going to be shut down?
Well, first, we take safety and the well-being of children in our care very seriously, hence our earlier conversation about the funding spent to keep them safe during the pandemic. His claims will be looked into and investigated by the Department of Health and Human Services. Currently, we have no basis for his call to shut down the San Antonio Freeman Coliseum as an intake site, but we will, of course, we take these allegations seriously, and they will be investigated.
The last one would just be, you said this week that you guys are trying to make the processing more efficient and effective, and that you're addressing this in a humane way that keeps these kids as safe as we possibly can. If these allegations are true, how is that consistent with what you guys are
Well, again,
trying?
we are looking into these allegations. We take them seriously, and our focus remains on the safety and well-being of children. Hence, we're looking into them and taking it very seriously. Go ahead, Caitlin.
Thank you. On the Commission for the Supreme Court, when President Biden first disclosed this idea, I believe he was still a candidate when he said this, he said he wanted recommendations as to how to reform the court system because, quote, it's getting out of whack. Yet this commission is not going to actually make recommendations.
They will be. They'll be doing a report 180 days. That will be released to the public.
But it's a report, but it's not them actually making recommendations to the president.
Well, I'm sure he'll take a look at that report that this diverse group of members are putting together, thinking through over the next 180 days, and it will impact his thinking moving forward.
So, but it won't explicitly say, here's a recommendation from what we've studied to do X, Y, Z.
It's meant to be a report and a summary of their discussions and their findings. I don't know what it will look like, and I'm not going to get ahead of what their process will be.
Okay, and then of the lawmakers who are being invited on Monday, who picked the group of lawmakers that are being invited? Was it the president?
The White House? These decisions are made in coordination between the Legislative Affairs team and, of course, with the approval of the president and who will be invited. And I will just say that whenever we have the final list, this will be the first of what we envision, as you can see by his schedule next week, to be many meetings and many of them bipartisan as well.
And is it important for him to have Senator Manchin there on Monday?
I'm not sure if he will be a part of it or not. He's somebody that we're, of course, in close touch with, and we look forward to working with as we move the American Jobs Plan forward.
Okay, and my last question on Johnson & Johnson, given just how much money the federal government has given them and the president has ordered an additional 100 million doses from them, has he actually spoken with any of the executives at Johnson & Johnson given these uneven numbers of doses that we're seeing coming in and how slow they've been to get an even, steady supply of production?
Well, I would say that our COVID coordinator, Jeff Zients, and other members of our COVID team are typically the appropriate points of contact with leaders from any of these companies. We always expected there to be up and down their production. We, of course, as you all know, because we've been talking about it, they have taken steps and they've worked closely with HHS to work toward FDA approval. That's obviously up to the FDA for the emergent facility, which will certainly enhance their production capacity. But we see this as, our role here is to take steps we can from the federal government along the way to help ensure that we are getting as much J&J supply and doses out to states, out to the American people, so that it can contribute to our recovery from the pandemic. But we always knew, we've known for some time that there would be ups and downs on the road.
But I think also we thought that they would have a lot more ready by now than what they have produced. I mean, according to the initial federal contract even, it's far different than what that was supposed to be. Understandably, there are issues, but does the president feel that this rises to the level that he should make a phone call to someone at Johnson & Johnson to discuss what's been going on?
He's confident in the role that the COVID team plays, and we've also been assured by Johnson & Johnson that they remain committed to meeting their contract of delivering 100 million doses by the end of May. Go ahead, Mike.